friends, in the series which we are doing on the making of contemporary India from 1950s to 1990s, today we will talk about the caste politics and the Dravidian movement. As all of us are aware that caste is an important component of the Indian society and polity, and how caste is a determinant in the electoral politics has been seen in the different elections which have been fought at different levels. When we tend to understand the kind of caste politics which is there in the Indian society, we also find that how it has roots in the pre-independence times, and how various kinds of movements. Today we will talk about the Dravidian movement and the issue of the north and south divide, how the north was seen as the cradle of the Aryan civilization, and how the Dravidian movement was an important component of the South India. So we will try to see the kind of developments in the context of the caste politics in the Indian political scenario, and also the development of the Dravidian movement before independence and even after in the independence of India, and how the political parties, all of them, they have engaged at different points of time to secure their votes in terms of appeasing the different kinds of caste or following the kind of politics which is associated with the caste. So if you want to refer some of the readings, as Bipin Chandra, India after Independence, Ram Guha, India after Gandhi, as you can see on the screen as well, and Ram, Dravidian movement in its pre-independence phases, Mohan Ram, Ramaswamy Naikar and the Dravidian movement, T.M. Parthasarathy, History of DMK 1916 to 1962. So these are some of the readings which one can refer, apart from the others which are talking about the issue of caste politics and the Dravidian movement. And as I told you earlier, that how caste is an important concern of the Indian society, and how even after independence we find that the in the electoral politics the caste has been used by different political parties. But from the social point of view, in terms of the kind of hierarchies of low and high, the way people they have been in a way categorized in terms of untouchables and touchables, and the way the unequal access to the resources that the people, those who are from the lower section of the society, that they do not have equal access to the resources, and how they are also being in a way exploited, how the lower caste they are being oppressed. So this kind of discrimination against the lower caste by the upper caste has been one of the important concerns of the Indian society. And when we tend to see it in the framework that how certain peoples or certain castes they are in a way seen to be untouchable in nature, where they are being denied access to the ownership of land, they could not enter the temples, and they do not have access to the common resources. For example, water from the village tank or well is not available to them. So non-touchable caste, even the lowest among them, they were not to have any kind of physical contact with the untouchables. So they could not even accept water or food from the hands of the untouchables. So these kinds of hierarchies or distinctions, they were being created at different levels in the Indian society. And we find that the Dravidian movement in British India, it in a way began with the formation of the Justice Party in 1916 in Madras by C.N. Mudaliar along with T.M. Nair and P.T. Chetty as a result of a series of non-Brahmin conferences and the meetings. So we find that how Dravidian movement, it began during this time, And thereafter we find that Periyar or Naikar, who can also be seen on the screen at this point of time, he played an important role in that sense that he became the initiator of the Dravidian movement in the pre-colonial India. And this kind of a thing continues even after independence as well. And we find that some of the important leaders, they also established political parties, MK and DMK. So these were the political parties which were also talking about the Dravidian movement, and how some of the issues of the Dravidian movement, they concerned the ideas which were related in that sense to the issue of the North and South divide in the context of the Brahmins and the non-Brahmins, and how they also wanted to have some kind of a Dravid state where they wanted to secede from India. So it was not constitutional in nature, and this kind of a demand was in a way taken back in the later times after independence. And we, as I told you earlier as well, that how the Dravidian movement was founded by E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, and how with the aim of achieving a society where the backward sections, they have equal human rights, and encouraging the backward sections to have self-respect. So the ideas of Naikar, they were concerned with the ideas of self-respect, and they were propagated or promoted through a Tamil weekly Kudiya Rasu, and in which Periyar or Naikar was writing articles on the women's rights, on atheism and against the caste system. So he was in a way representing the alternative political traditions in the age when Congress was attempting to establish a unitary ideal of nationalism against colonialism. And we find that this kind of a Brahmin domination and the idea of Brahminism was in a way being attacked. And as I also told you earlier, that how the idea of secessionism or this kind of a policy was also there in their political ideology. And but in the later times after independence, we find that this idea was being dropped. And but some of the thinkers like Naikar, even after independence, he continued to represent the strong Tamil reaction to Brahminism as also assertion of Tamil identity vis-a-vis rest of India. So we find that the movement, especially after independence, it got split as well, because after independence Khazagam, it grew steadily over a period of time, though it lacked some kind of a political orientation and the ideological cohesiveness. And we also find that there was a political rivalry between Naikar and his ambitious young lieutenant C.N. Annadurai, and how Annadurai, he had his own ambitions, and he began rallying support for the new party which was known as Dravid Munedra Khanzagam, DMK. And there was a split as well, and because the program and the objectives of the new party was not all that different from the DK, which was Dravid Khazagam, and both of them, they talked about the Dravid Nadu as well. And we find that how in a way Annadurai, he tried to foster a myth that the new organization was not a political party in the conventional sense, but it was a broad social reform movement without the electoral ambitions. So this kind of an idea, it was being promoted that it was not a political outfit in that sense, but a broad social reform movement, and it did not have any kind of electoral ambitions as well. And we find that both of them, they initially started as a protest against the dominations of the Brahmins in the Tamil Nadu, and it was given a new dimension after the independence of India, when they directed their attack against the alleged domination of North India. So we find that how DMK, it was talking about Dravid Nadu or Dravidistan, and but over a period of time it realized, because of the legal and the constitutional compulsions, and it gave up its demand for an independent Dravid Nadu. And we also find that how they were also against the use of the Hindi language in the schools and the colleges in Tamil Nadu, and the use of Sanskrit in Tamil worship, in temple worship, and against idol worship. So they felt that Sanskrit, use of Sanskrit in temple worship should not be there, and how Hindi language it should not be in a way taught in the schools and colleges in Tamil Nadu. And so language was definitely an important concern, and how language also was concerned with the idea of employment as well, that by promoting only one particular language, then it may also hamper their employment opportunities which are there. And definitely language is also part of culture, so imposing one language on another area or a group will also affect their cultural aspirations as well. So we find that the economic changes which came over a period of time in terms of commercialization of agricultural production, how the changes came in the agrarian relations, how the contractual relations they emerged during this time, and the new employment opportunities which came outside the villages in factories, mandis, government service, army, they all contributed to a shift in the position of untouchables. And we find that these kinds of movements which were there, some of them they were there in the pre-independence times as well. When you tend to see Jyotiba Phule in Maharashtra and Sri Narayan Guru in Kerala, they also began to question the caste system and the caste inequality, and how abolition of untouchability was integrated by Gandhiji into the national movement, and the major campaigns and the struggles such as the Vaikom and Guruvayur Satyagrah, they were also being organized. And how Gandhi especially felt about the issue of untouchability, and he felt that how the upper caste, they had to realize the enormity of the injustice which was being done via the practice of untouchability, and to persuade the people to atone for this wrong. As you can see on the screen as well, that how Gandhiji's effort which was there in that sense with regard to the practice of untouchability, and in his ashrams at different places, which the ashrams which he established at Sabarmati and at other places as well, we find that he focused on the issue of self-reliance or Atmanirbharta, where the individual had to do his entire work and he did not have to depend on any other person for his own work. So Gandhiji was trying to inculcate this kind of an idea, that how the practice of untouchability had to be rejected, it is not to be accepted by the masses. So this kind of a change had to come from within, and when the people they will realize that it is an injustice which had to be rejected in all ways, then only the practice of untouchability can be uprooted from the Indian society. So Gandhiji was very well aware of this kind of a problem, and he integrated the idea of untouchability with the national movement, where he was trying to project this idea in such a way that we have to get rid of this practice called untouchability. So he fully well realized that unless Indians they will become united, and they will only be united when they will, in a way, they will abolish such kind of practices which are dividing them on different lines, and this is how he became critical of the idea of untouchability. We also find that with regard to the idea of with regard to the issues concerning in 1932 with regard to the communal award which was there, and how Pune Pact was signed by in the context of the communal award, where how division within the Hindu society was being created by the Britishers, and it was being rejected by Gandhi. And thereafter we see that how Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi, they arrive at some kind of a solution in the Pune Pact. And when we tend to understand the leaders, those who were associated in terms of the upliftment of the various castes which were at the lowest levels, the name of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in terms of the leader of the depressed classes, it became quite popular by 1920s, and he got associated with many organizations, where he formed many organizations, and in 1936 we see he formed the Independent Labour Party, which sought to combine with peasants and workers, and contested and won a few seats in 1937 elections to Bombay Legislative Assembly. So the role of Dr. Ambedkar at different forums and at different parties which he established, or the organizations with which he was associated. And finally we also find that how he, in 1942 he also established the Scheduled Caste Federation, and he also was in a way cooperating politically with the colonial government, on the understanding that he could get more benefits for the SCs. So this kind of a thing could also be seen during this time, and thereafter we see the contribution of Dr. Ambedkar in the Constitution of India as well, which has many provisions with regard to the amelioration or upliftment of the people, those who are deprived or disadvantaged. And we find that how the political rights, they were being extended after independence through the Constitution, and these rights, they were irrespective of the religion, caste, sex, language, race, and this included all the people of India. And in Article 17 it in a way declares that untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. Enforcement of any disability arising out of untouchability shall be an offence punishable with law. So the legislation was also, as you can see on the screen, that how legislation was also in consonance with removing these kinds of ideas. And in 1955 we find that Parliament passed the Untouchability Offence Act, which also specified that, as you can see on the screen as well, that any offences were punishable with a fine, cancellation of licenses and public grants. So such kind of legislations, they were very, very important in terms of improving the situation and the condition, and they played an important role in the long run as well. And we also find that the Protection of the Civil Rights Amendment Act was passed, which provided for the enhanced and stringent punishment and the appointment of officers and the special courts to deal with offenders and the legal aid for victims, etc. So this act came in 1976. So we find that these kind of provisions, they were coming at they were being in a way updated at regular points of time, and how reservation of the seats in the legislatures and the educational institutions and the government jobs for the various castes, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, they were also being undertaken. And how Dr. Ambedkar was also law minister in the Nehru's cabinet, and he played an important role in that sense, where he tried to bring, not only he in a way converted to Buddhism, but there were others, those who converted to Buddhism along with him, and there were other parties in early 1970s like Dalit Panthers, and how they emerged in Maharashtra as part of countrywide wave of radical politics. So this was a trend in 1970s, where we find that it was also reflected in the creative literature and in the politics, where the Dalit Panthers, they leaned ideologically on the Ambedkar's thought, and had their base mainly among the youth and the students in the urban centers. And they were also talking about the revolution, but there is little evidence of any concrete strategy being involved. So this has been talked about Bipin Chandra, that they were also talking about the idea of revolution, but there is not much evidence, there is very little evidence of any concrete strategy with regard to that kind of an idea. So we find that how the caste politics was an important component in the post-independence India as well, and there were many parties like BSP, Bahujan Samaj Party, which emerged in 80s under Kanshiram and later Mayawati, who became the chief minister of UP as well. And at the same time, we find that many times such kind of political organizations, they in a way were more concerned with the political power and their vote share, and because of which the ideological component, it was not taken into consideration much, and the main focus became the assumption of power. And we also find that how many of the non-Dalit parties and groups, they also have taken important concerns of the Dalits and played an important role in their empowerment. And agricultural labor unions, which have also been set up by the different parties, and also the NGOs, they have also taken up the agricultural demands for the employment guarantee schemes, right to work, abolition of the child labor, right to education. So they have talked about a new Dalit self-confidence, and many other organizations have also mushroomed. Dalit youth in rural areas, they have also been organized the Ambedkar Sanghams, and in many of the urban areas, student, teachers, youth, office workers, they have also been organized into associations. And many times we find that they are concerned with their own interest, but at the same time we also find that many of them, they are also trying to connect with others. And we find that the conversion in terms of Buddhist conversion was another important concern, where people, they converted to Buddhism, but at the same time some of the sociologists, they have communicated that they, even after converting to Buddhism, they were celebrating the Hindu festivals and they were following the Hindu rituals as well. So we find that many of these issues, they are quite relevant in the times of today as well, and these kind of distinctions could be seen in the context of Christianity and Muslims as well, where Ajlaf and Ashraf Muslims, and these kind of distinctions are there. And So these kind of changes which have come over a period of time are also because of the reservation of the jobs, the reservation at the educational institutions, that has also been an important change maker, and the reservation of seats in the legislature and other places has also played an important role. And Bipin Chandra, he argues that a more recent problem is the competition between the different SC castes, as benefits of reservation are inevitably availed of by better off caste among SCs. Disadvantaged ones begin to demand quotas within quotas, and intra-SC hostilities becoming increasingly politically visible. So this kind of a competition has been also highlighted by Bipin Chandra, and this you can see in the case of the Mandal Commission as well, where we find with the introduction of the Mandal Commission these kind of changes, where the other backward caste and the more backward caste, among the backward caste, they have also been talked about. So we will this is what I wanted to talk about with regard to the caste politics, and we will talk further in other lectures as well. Thank you very much.